Wonderful to be back here in Melbourne. It's wonderful to be back at a Devfest. And, we thanked a whole bunch of the sponsors, but, and I know we don't have everyone here in the room, but I think we should thank the organizers because it takes a lot of work to pull this together. And, I live in Sydney. I always love coming down for Devfest Melbourne. So thank you for having me. Now, I'm guessing that today you're all here for a reason, and that is because you are a unique group of people who are innovators, who are creators, who are disruptors, who are looking to build something entirely new. You're not here because you want to think outside the box. You're here to create the box. And my role here today is to show you the art of what's possible right now on Google Cloud with generative AI. So generative AI is clearly having its moment. It's been a crazy few 12 months. You may be asking yourself, is the hype real? Like, what's the go? Every time Googlers get up on stage and talk about anything, they use AI as every second word. I'm sure you've noticed that too. So is it really as big a deal as Google believes it is? Is it real? Like, what can I do with it that's tangible? And I hope we'll get to explore some of that today. I'm going to be doing quite a few demos, but I'm going to start off with some context. And where AI and machine learning has been for a number of years, I think the excitement behind behind machine learning really kicked off with TensorFlow around the 2014, 2015 timeframe. We were able to build models and train them on data, and we could predict or infer things from that data that it was trained against. Now what we're starting to move towards is a world where we're able to classify that data. We're able to actually understand things. So you saw some really impressive demos from Oscar, and he set a really good context there about how these models are, in some ways he kind of classed them as glorified auto-completion engines. They're clearly more than that in terms of what goes on under the covers. They're starting to understand the intent of questions, of language, and discern meaning. And ultimately, they are generating responses. They're creating those responses from the get-go. And all of that is because of this shift of these large language models or large foundation models, right? As Oscar said, it requires immense amounts of data to train these models. It requires immense amounts of compute resources to actually do that training. And it actually requires a lot of time despite having those resources to go and train those and tune those models. All of that also results in cost, right? And so you end up with these large models that are largely trained unsupervised, but are broadly useful for multimodal results. And Oscar explained multimodal text, audio, images, and many more things like that. But what is it that it makes it why is now the right time for all of this? And it's basically, we've come up with this, generative AI has started to happen at a time when we have a perfect storm of a number of things. We have cloud platforms and infrastructure that give us that level of compute that we need to bring this all together. You have copious amounts of compute, and it's instantly available to you on demand to be able to do this. You're not, there are many startups looking to buy NVIDIA A100s and so on, but for those of us that are not looking to buy the hardware, we can utilize that hardware for a few weeks, do what we need to with a click of a few buttons. And then based on that hardware, we're able to build these foundation models. Now, I've said that these foundation models are really hard to train. They're expensive. They take a lot of time. But the cool thing about them is that we're able to take those models and tune them for our use cases. And Oscar only briefly touched on this, that whilst foundation models are broadly useful for your use cases, you may want to tune them with your sets of data. You can do things like prompt design, so you can see the way that these models might be used. And that tuning is actually really quick. You can do it with small sets of data, much, much smaller sets of data. It happens very quickly and it happens very cheaply. So suddenly these foundation models can be used to specialize, it can be specialized for your needs. And then the way you surface them to users can be through search and conversational UIs, as well as traditional UIs as well. Now at Google, we want to make sure that generative AI is relevant and useful for everyone. You could be an AI practitioner, a data scientist, a data engineer. You could be someone that's never written a line of code in your life. You could be an entry-level developer, an advanced developer, and we have different capabilities on the Google Cloud platform to get you started. So we have a product called Gen AI App Builder, which is one of our no-code, low-code solutions for this. But then you can go to the very extreme on the right-hand side where you can build and train your own models and serve them at scale as well. But before we go too far into it, I think it's really important to call out that Google takes its responsibility very, very seriously. We've had questions already about data and training. The foundational, I don't want to use the word foundational because it'll overload with foundation models. The fundamental approach that we take to all the things you're going to see around generative AI today is that what we use to train the data is wholly licensed and appropriately licensed, and it's licensed for your individual needs, but that scales up to enterprises as well. Whatever data that you use to tune, that data is yours, right? We do not use your inputs to then further go and train our models. The outputs that are generated from these models are entirely yours to use. You're fully licensed to do what you like with them, and you own them. We want to make sure that we bring the best-in-class security, so user data is protected, it doesn't leak. We want to make sure that you can build your businesses on this, and so we take that reliability aspect really, really seriously. Now, Oscar talked about responsible AI. It is deeply rooted into every product that we bring to market, and those responsible AI principles, there are 7 of them, are available online. As you look at what we're going to talk about today and what I'm going to demonstrate to you today, just keep that in mind, that your data is entirely yours, and we're not using it to train anything around our usage. So today I'm going to cover 2 product areas, I guess you could say. One is on Vertex AI, and this isn't about trying to make a product pitch. It is literally about trying to show you some of the problems that you can solve with generative AI. And we're going to look at these 2 surface areas, Vertex AI and Duet AI, to do it. I'm going to start off with Vertex. Vertex is a massive platform. It has many, many different AI capabilities. Today, we're going to look at the generative AI side of Vertex AI. Vertex AI does support the need for you to go, if you want to go and train your own model and serve them and have an MLOps pipeline and scale those. It's got all of that if you want to do it from the ground up. Today, I'm going to focus specifically on the generative AI side of Vertex AI, and it's these colored boxes Duet AI will look at towards the end. We're going to start off with Model Garden and the AI platform on how to use these foundation models on Google Cloud. Now, that isn't to say, whilst we're not going to talk about some of these solutions, we do have more tailored solutions that are ready-made for you. So things like Document AI. So if you've got to do a lot of document processing, OCR, and so on, Document AI is a ready-to-use solution that builds up off all of this infrastructure, but you're just working at that document level. Same thing with Contact Center AI. If you want to build a support system or chatbots and so on, it's tailor-made for that. Today, we're going to focus at some of the lower levels. And we're going to start off by looking at Model Garden. So Model Garden is a place in Vertex AI where you can go and find foundation models. And you can go and deploy these foundation models and get endpoints from them. You can tune those models. You can go and experiment with those models. And I'm going to demo all of this. I'm going to just talk you through a couple of these models. The first one is Palm 2. If you've used Google Bard, Palm 2 is the model that powers Google Bard today. And it is broadly useful for many different use cases. Specifically, some of the ones I'll highlight are things like sentiment analysis, conversation, summarization, and it does a whole lot just in the model that's available. And then Oscar actually talked to you a little bit about some of these other models that we have. I know it's spelled IMAGEN. We're supposed to pronounce it as imagine. Just work with me here. That's what I've been told. It sounds like Imagen, but I've been told I've been pronouncing it wrong. So it's Imagine. Imagine is our model that is used for image generation. And I'm going to demonstrate how that works. If you've ever used Midjourney or Stable Diffusion or one of those others, it's got capabilities similar to that. Speech to text is, we have a model for that with Chirp. We have a code generation model called Cody, which is actually one of the models that we use in Duet AI for developers. But in Model Garden, you can also find specialized models for specific industries. You find MedPalm for the health industry, SecPalm for the security industry. And my prediction is that over time, we're going to see more of these domain-specific models that are trained for specific purposes. All in all, Model Garden offers over 100 models from partners all over the world. It's not just a place where you find Google's models. We actually bring in the best-in-class models that we find from partners online, and we surface them here. And again, we make sure that we are these models that we offer are brought to you in a responsible way. So once you've gone to Model Garden and you've found the model that you want to use, what do you do next with it? Well, at that point, you go to Generative AI Studio. I'm going to demo all of this workflow in a second. But you go to Generative AI Studio, where you can actually go and test out these models. You can interact with them. You can deploy them. You can even tune them for your specific data. The user interface we're about to see in a minute, but it is a really simple and straightforward UI that you can use to tune your models and even deploy them in production. So let's get started with our first demo. I'm going to go to Google Cloud, and under Vertex AI, there's a slight delay between when I move and what you see. But anyway, under Vertex AI, we've got Model Garden there. That Model Garden brings you to an interface that looks like this. You'll see we've got a column here that talks about the different modalities, whether it's language, vision, speech, and so on. You can be task-based as well. I'm going to show you some of these foundation models. So on the right-hand side here, I've zoomed in, so I hope you can see. Can you all at the back? Yeah, reasonably okay. So you'll see here, it says show all 46. We've got 46 different foundation models. We've got other models as well. I said there's 100 different models because they're more specialized, and they're not all foundation. But we have 46 of them. You'll see Palm 2 is our model that, as I said, we work with Google Bard. We use for Google Bard. We have Llama 2 from Meta. If you scroll further down, we've got Imagine. We've got Cody, Stable Diffusion. So basically, Model Garden is the place that you can go and discover these new models. And you can go try them for your use cases. There was a question that Oscar answered around, hey, how do we balance different models and so on? You can find them in the one place here in Model Garden for many of these models. But for our demo, the first thing we'll do is we'll go to Palm 2. And you'll see here, you can sort of learn a little bit about the model itself, some description. It can show you some API code, but right now we're going to go and do this open prompt design. And what it's done is, if you look on the left-hand side, we've ended up in Generative AI Studio in the language section. And we're presented with a very simple prompt dialogue and a response. And you may say, hey, how is this different to Google Bard? Because I can ask questions and prompt models in that too. That's a consumer product. It's not something that you use to build and test out models or tune models. So this has a very different purpose. And so for our first demo, what we'll do is we're going to grab the Wikipedia page for Melbourne, and I'm going to go and ask it to summarize. Why did I spell it in American style? And then I'm going to hit submit, and it gives you a relatively quick response. You know what? I might zoom in here. It's a little bit more legible. And you'll see that it's actually summarized that Wikipedia page. It's also found some other sources that it's used, and it's cited those sources. But it says Melbourne is the capital city and most populous city of the Australian state of Victoria, and the second most populous city in Australia. Talks about the Yarra River, 5 million people from over 200 countries, known for its vibrant arts and culture, and its coffee culture. So, yay, Melbourne. So, you can see here that we are able to do just a very basic level of prompting. There's some parameters here on the right-hand side. So whilst we're using the Palm 2 API, there's different models within Palm 2, the Palm 2 family of models. So we're using this model called Text Bison, and that's going to be, that name will ring a bell when we get to a section further up. Now I want to show you something that's a little bit different. I'm going to show you something that's not really for developers, but you can see the the way that these tools can help us actually accomplish things that might have seemed a lot harder in the past, or might have required a lot more work. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy a prompt from my little demo doc, which says, oops, sorry, wrong prompt, cafe menu. So we're going to go and ask it to create a cafe menu with description and price. So effectively what we're asking this model to do is, hey, let's pretend we're a cafe, or we're starting a cafe and we wanted to come up with a menu for it. And the Palm 2 API is creating that response down here. It's actually in Markdown. And so the nice thing about it is you can check the little Markdown box and you get a little bit of formatting that makes it a lot easier to read. And it's done a pretty good job. It's given us a few breakfast items, a few lunch and dinner options, and some drinks, the kind of stuff that you'd find at a cafe, the BLT, the bacon, lettuce, and tomato on toasted bread. So it's just created that for us. But of course, if we were just creating a menu, that's kind of drab and a bit boring to look at. So why don't we now have a look at Imagine and try and generate some images around these. So give me 1 sec. I'm just going to switch to a different window where I have Imagine set up. And nope, that's the wrong one. Let me brave it and share my screen for a sec. All right. So we've got Imagine here, and then what I'm going to do is go back to the menu that we had, that we generated. I'm just going to copy some of these things. So let's say we'll get the full Monty, which is 2 eggs, bacon. Let me zoom in on this one as well. Bacon, sausage, hash browns, and a coffee. Hit generate. And you'll see Imagine is going to go and generate these images. Now, the interesting thing about this is it is not doing a Google image search. These are not images that existed. It has created these from scratch right there and then. Let's do some more. Let's do bacon, lettuce, tomato on toasted bread. Paste that. And actually, we should have zoomed in on one of those, so we'll zoom in on the next one so you can see what it looks like in not just a thumbnail fashion. It's pretty realistic, right? So the point is that in this very simple use case that I picked of just a cafe menu with some images, we were able to be like super productive. So now when I start to think about like people using AI, generative AI, it's not just developers, right? You're able to do things in very creative ways with very little effort and get going. But ultimately, we're developers. So I'm going to switch back to this window, and hopefully this time will be good. But ultimately, we're developers. We like to play with APIs. Well, I'm a developer. I'm sure there's folks that are developers here and others that maybe are AI practitioners, data scientists, and so on. But let me just show you what it looks like from an API standpoint. So here what we have is a Jupyter Notebook. Are folks familiar with Jupyter Notebooks? Yeah, I see some hands raised. All right, so basically a Jupyter Notebook allows us to have a very interactive document where we can run code, typically Python code. So the first thing I'm going to do is clone a Git repo, which is I'm using the Google Cloud Platform Generative AI repo. And I'm just going to put that here. It takes literally a few seconds to clone it. Now, this particular repo has a whole bunch of our getting started notebooks. And we're not going to walk through an entire tutorial. I just want to highlight a couple of things here. Now, when you run Jupyter Notebooks, there's different ways to run it. You can run it on your own. You can host your own Jupyter Notebook server at your side. You can use Google Colab. I'm actually using Vertex AI's Workbench. And the reason I'm doing that is because it handles all the authentication to Google Cloud and setting up my cloud project for me. So I'm going to go to getting started. I'm going to bring up this Intro to Palm API workbook. And so you look at this and it looks like a tutorial, right? And it is. And again, you can bring it up in Colab or Vertex AI Workbench. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit on this one as well. So ultimately, we're going to run through different blocks of code to show you how the Palm API works. I'm scrolling through this quickly because you can do this in your own time. I just want to show you how simple it is. The first thing I'm running, whoops, I just need to restart the kernel. because I cleared this environment. So I'm just running pip install, which grabs the Vertex AI SDK. It's gone and grabbed that for me. This code you can see is all commented out. This is the authentication code right here. We don't need to run it. We don't need to set up our Google Cloud project. Here's the first real bit of code. We're going to import some Python packages. And so it's gone ahead and done that. And then remember I said when we looked at the Palm API that we use this text bison model. That's the model that we're interacting with, is the text model, not any of the image models and so on. And instantiating that is a simple one-liner just here that says, hey, give me this pre-trained model, give me the text bison version 1, and we've chucked it into this variable called generation underscore model. And then we can start to use prompts against it. So the default prompt that they have here is, what is a large language model? Again, it's a one-liner to go and get it to predict. So I'm just going to hit Shift Enter on that. And you'll see it'll tell us a large language model is a type of artificial intelligence model that can understand and generate human language, wrapped text. We can change these as well. Let's say, what is a koala? A koala is a small and furry animal that lives in Australia. Pretty accurate. We can do other things with it as well. So Oscar talked about tokens and how it parses and generates tokens. So here we can say something like create a numbered list of items. Each list should be a trend in the tech industry. Each trend should be less than 5 words. So we can get a list of these. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, blockchain, don't know about that one. VR, AR, so on and so forth. And again, it's Python code, so we can switch it up with a different industry. Someone want to throw an industry out at me?
Finance.
Finance, all right. And you can see that it's all dynamic. This is not artificial intelligence, blockchain, big data, fintech, yep, sounds like the right ones. Now, when we start to call these models, remember I said in Vertex that there were some parameters on the right-hand side. So one of the parameters that's quite interesting is one called temperature. And temperature allows you to control the randomness of the output that you get. And through that randomness, you can get creative responses as well. And depending on your use case, you might want something that is the same every time versus if you're building an application that writes children's stories, you might want it to be a bit more creative. So I'll show you how to use that temperature value. We literally set a variable called temp_val0. The prompt here is, as I prepared the picture frame, I reached into the toolkit to fetch and we want the model to complete it. We're passing in that temperature value here, but this time that temperature value is set to 0. And so every time we run this, we should get the same response, which is hammer. I've run it like 15, 20 times in practice, and every time when temp val is 0, it's giving me hammer. Let's change that temp val to 1. And now you'll start to see, and we'll run through this a couple of times, and you'll start to see that we start to get variability. I reached into my toolkit to fetch my screwdriver. Let's do it a couple more times. Still came back as screwdriver this time, but it's given me a paragraph following it. The correct answer is hammer. Okay. I had nail gun, I had glue. I had a number of these show up, and that's where the randomness kind of kicks in. Utility knife. So it'll vary. And so the temp value is how you can control what you want it to, whether you want to call it a hallucination or not. And there are valid use cases where you don't necessarily want the same answer every time. And then we're able to do things like limit the number of output tokens. So list ways that the generative AI can help improve the online shopping experience for users. And we said max tokens 5, so we got a simple response of just personal. It's not enough there. So let's change the output tokens to 500, and suddenly we're going to get a whole bunch of stuff. It's a bit hard to read, so because it's Markdown, we can have Colab format it nicely for us, personalized recommendations, virtual try-on, so on and so forth. The point I'm trying to make is like using this. Really? 35 minutes, wasn't it?
Really quick question.
Okay.
The 5 still feel good.
All right. So the point I was trying to make is that the API is super simple to use, and we showed you the Python bindings there, but you can easily use other languages as well. We have bindings for other languages. There's REST calls and so on. When you tune your models, it can set up an endpoint for you for your tuned models and serve that for you at scale as well. Again, you don't need to think about provisioning infrastructure or anything like that. The scaling and the reliability is just built into Vertex AI. Now, so we looked at some of the things that we can do with generative AI, but now I want to switch gears to being a cloud practitioner. And that's really about Duet AI. How do we be more productive as cloud practitioners? Now, as we started at Google, started looking at generative AI, this technology, we started to think about the fact that using cloud, not just Google Cloud, but generally using any cloud provider has been more or less the same for a number of years. And we can really improve or change that experience with generative AI. So we set out to rethink or reimagine what that experience would be like. Oh, reimagine, it's spelled imagine correctly this time. But we set out to rethink what that cloud experience could look like. And today I'm going to talk to you about the developer side of things, but we have permeated Duet AI throughout Google Cloud and even into Google Workspace. If you use Gmail and Docs and Sheets and Slides, you can opt into Duet AI there, and it'll help you write emails and be more creative with your slides and so on and so forth. For Duet AI for cloud, we actually have it across a number of personas. So whether you're a developer or an operator, so people looking at SLOs and SLAs, looking at your logs and alerts, Duet AI can help you accomplish those tasks a lot easier. I'm going to show you some demos in a second. In the analytics space, again, you can use Duet AI to really make that experience a lot easier. It can give you advice on databases and how you structure your tables and so on. And also look at your sort of security surface area and give you recommendations based on how your security footprint looks like. So I'm going to focus on the developer side of things. With Duet AI, we've made Duet AI available across all the major IDEs, Visual Studio, VS Code, all of the IntelliJ IDEs, Google Cloud Console, Google Cloud Shell Editor as well. And it's through our plugin called Cloud Code, which already makes it easy to use Google Cloud. Now, when we set out to do the sort of developer perspective, we looked at the Stack Overflow developer survey and the results that came back from that in terms of what pain points developers had. These are the overwhelming pain points that we thought we should really focus on. 62% of developers said they spend more than half an hour a day finding solutions for problems. We all know what that's like. We want to solve something and we have to end up Googling it. We come up with a list of pages. Many of them are Stack Overflow. Some of them have answers, and then you've got comments that say this answer's not right, and oh, you're using the wrong library, so on and so forth. So we actually take a lot of time finding those solutions. Almost half the folks said onboarding is really hard and familiarizing yourself with a new code base. And related to that, 2/3 of folks said that they encounter what they call a knowledge silo once a week. You know, the kind of stuff where there's some documentation that you weren't aware of that would have helped you answer your question, or you had a team of experts in your organization. Maybe you are one of those that have been around for a while. You really know that code base, but some of those newer team members don't know it as well. So wouldn't it be great if we could all have a on-demand expert to help us that could scale beyond an individual? I've said this a number of times, but Duet AI, when you use it, we don't store the prompts. The training and the usage are two different things. We do not use your code to train or change Duet AI's models. And when it cites large amounts of code, it gives you those citations as well when it gives you lengthy sources. Again, it's your code. You can do what you like with it. So let's switch to a demo. I'm going to start up. Actually, before I start up VS Code, so I was looking for what demo to use. A few years ago, hard to see this. Let me zoom in. A few years ago, I'm a gamer. I was really into some flight simulators. I was playing Microsoft Flight Simulator, Elite Dangerous, Star Wars Squadrons. I also had a hands-on throttle and stick joystick. You have to configure these buttons, and you end up with like 40 different buttons, and you forget from game to game where they do. So what they do, the actions. So I wrote a little Go program that I can upload a config file to, and it generates these reference cards for you. So I thought, let me have a look at how Duet AI goes with that code base. Whoops, need to go to Zoom. Switch to Duet, or to VS Code, sorry. on, VS Code. Nope. All right. Let me try the whole screen. There we are. So I'm just gonna bring up some code. So look, this was code that I wrote myself. It's an open source application, but I was the sole developer. So I haven't touched this code for like 2 years. And honestly, I'd forgotten some of the stuff that I'd done with it. This is where I thought Duet AI might be useful for me. So for example, I'm able to have it go and explain code. So I'm just selecting the function get server and going to Duet and saying, go ahead and explain what this code does. Let me see if I can make that bigger. So Duet is able to analyze this code and explain that, hey, it's used to run the server. It takes these arguments. It loads the config file. It sets up the router. And these are all the things that are happening in my code here. And it's doing it for me. Going further, I'm going to get this load local files, which is a much smaller function. Explain that. And again, it's able to tell me what's going on with this function and the fact, like what it takes as inputs, how it generates the outputs, and so on. What I also noticed is that there was a little strike through some of my code here. I didn't plant this one. This is code that's out there, and it turns out that in Go 1.16 they deprecated this function. So why don't we ask Duet to go ahead and help me fix that deprecation? So I can say, help me fix this deprecation. And Duet tells me that this function is deprecated. It's going to be removed at some point in the future, and that I should use a different function instead. And it gives me the actual line of code that I need to get. I can copy to clipboard and override it. And I can save it. I got rid of the strike through. I can kick off a build task, and it'll go ahead and build. It shouldn't take too long, but the point is that there you go, it passes. So Duet is able to help me solve these kinds of problems, and this was a legitimate problem that existed in my code base. The other thing that it can do is, remember I said it can help us find solutions? So one of the things I need to do in this application is, rather than when I generate these images, I don't store them anywhere. So I need to send them as an image blob to the browser. We might want to base 64 encode that. So I'll ask it, write a function to base 64 encode a byte array. And basically in straight away, let me see if I can make that bigger. It's given me the code that I can call to actually take a byte array and encode it to a string, to a byte 64 string, a base 64 string, and return it straight away. If I had to look that up, that would take me at least 10 minutes to go look it up, find some solutions, work out which one is the right solution and do it. I was able to do it right there, right in place of the IDE itself. So that's one of those examples of where we can really make it so much faster. Now, I didn't get time to demo this, but one of my favorite features is that Duet AI can help you generate unit tests. For those of you that write code, I'll tell you, I'll openly admit, I don't enjoy writing unit tests. So this is a godsend for me. I'm sure there's many of you out there. Some of you may be openly able to admit it, and others maybe not. But the point is that this sort of functionality is super useful, and it really just cuts the toil for developers. We can get more work done. And that's really what all this capability is about, is getting us to be more productive and leveraging generative AI to do so. So that concludes my talk. I want to give you two quick call to actions. One is, if you're looking at, if you want to look up any of this generative AI stuff, the place to get started is this short link, goo.gle/generative AI. It's a QR code to go with it. So I'll let folks grab that. There's one more QR code I want to share with you. To get started at on Google Cloud, you often need to put your credit card number in. And if you just want to go kick the tires and play around, you can get a small credit for Google Cloud just by going to this link, trygcp.dev/df23-Melbourne. It'll ask you to sign in with your Google account. Once you click that link, it'll take you to the billing page and activate the credit. The aim of this is it's a tiny amount of money. It's not meant to be for you to consume through. It's meant to be to give you access to the free tier so that you can continue to do it without having to put your payment details in so that you can try these things. All right, I want to say thank you for attending my talk today. And I want to reiterate that this technology is a game changer. This is a way that is going to change the way we do software development, the way we do content creation, and we're starting to see that even in these early days. So I hope that you agree with me that we are no longer trying to think outside the box. We're trying to create a new one. Thank you.